de lenguajes decidibles o decibles.
Decidibles, yes. There is a here. You are asking about this. Lenguajes decidibles por máquinas de Turing. Turing decidable languages. This is, well, also this will be the future, but as you are asking now, it's okay. We have seen regular languages. Can you see my mouse? Okay, so we have, we know already regular languages. We know also deterministic context-free languages. You remember that making them deterministic reduces our power. And also we have seen context-free languages which correspond to push-down automata, PA. And now we are studying phrase structured languages. So this part, Turing decidable languages, is a new intermediate layer we will study, because precisely it is very important, the problem that a Turing machine can or not decide, or not if a string is in a language, because you will see there are some languages that, for example, this one, it accepts the string, it stops. It does not accept the string, it will never stop. Then there are some languages for which you can stop for both, when it belongs and where it doesn't belong. These are Turing decidable languages. But there are other languages that will only be able to recognize if it belongs, but if it doesn't belong, you cannot stop. You cannot say it does not belong. Yes. For example, let me go back to this part. For example, you can say when the machine will stop, well, in this case, never. And you could also, it's better with this example. Let me go back and let me, please close your eyes so you won't get dizzy. Until I find the correct. Okay, so you remember this machine, right? This is the last one we were studying last time. And the particularity of this machine is that if it finishes at this point, it will stop. The only way it will finish is when it finds a hash. So it's kind of, it is saying, if you find here a hash, then stop. It's a sort of saying this. If not hash, then enter infinite loop. If hash, then halt. So we don't need to draw this because this is implicit. Whenever we don't say what to do, the machine will halt. Okay, so now let's transform this so that instead of just halting, we want the machine to say, okay, now I move to the right, write a white space, and then write yes. No, move to the right and write yes, and then stop. With this modification, whenever the machine finishes, it goes back to the hash and then moves to the right. Well, maybe not move to the right, just erase the hash, move to the right and say yes. And if we want this machine to say also no, instead of this part, we will add something different. We will say, okay, then you found something that is not the hash, then you will look for the hash. It will, it means underscore hash. So look for the hash to the left and then write a blank space over there. and then write N. And then another white space. And here another blank space. So if you don't have clear what is this, it's just a big L with a small hash. Like this. So this means move to the left, looking for the hash. When you find the hash, then stop there. And then write a white space, say no, move to the right, and then write a white space. So now we have modified this machine in the sense that whenever the string complies with the characteristics we want, for example, we want x, x, y, y, z, z. This is the string that last class we were studying, and we know that the machine will stop with this configuration. So we will reach this part, and then we will have yes. The machine will say yes. Okay, it will write blank space, y, and another blank space. So at the end, the configuration of the tape will be, assuming that we have, for example, here blank spaces, and here we have blank spaces, and this is it cannot underline just a single character. Okay, our head is here. Okay, so giving this start configuration, when the machine accepts this string, the final configuration will be, it will destroy the string, and it will say yes, and then write a blank space. In the case it's accepted. In the case it is not accepted, we want it to write a no, an N. For example, if we have, maybe we will see this again next class, because we need to run it step by step. So let's suppose we have another string that is not accepted. For example, x, y, and z, z, y, x. This string won't be accepted. So at the end, because of the modification we have done to this machine, it will end with a no. So now this machine has the particularity that it will stop for both cases. It will stop when it accepts the string, but also it will stop when it rejects the string. So we can say this language is decidable because we can stop at either case. So I will write this. This language is decidable because we can design a machine, a machine that stops when a string belongs to it, to the language, and also stops when it does not belong. That is what makes a language decidable. If a language is decidable, it means it can stop on either way. Given written in a different form, there is a machine that accepts L, and also there is a machine that accepts its complement. So we will go back into this next class, but I'm telling you this because you asked. So don't get stressed if you say, well, how come I don't quite get it? Don't worry, we will review it again. But now it is important to know that there are some languages that cannot be accepted by a machine like this that stops here and also stops here. In this case, this language it can be decidable. But other languages can say when there is a machine that can stop when a string belongs to it, but they cannot stop when a string does not belong to that. A very common example for this is when you try to see if a program will fail. You can imagine yourselves programming, writing a program, a computer program in any language, in your favorite language, except Java. So you can imagine yourself programming in a certain language. And whenever you find, you are asked to write a program that verifies another program, and it says without executing it, if it will hang, you cannot do that. And maybe it's sort of evident why you cannot, because if you want to see if this program will hang, it depends on many variables, it depends on the state of the machine, it depends on many things. So that if this program will hang, will continue infinitely its execution, you need to run it. And then you will see it hangs, and then you can say, oh, well, it hanged. But then anyone can say and ask you, well, it hanged after 2 minutes. How come? Maybe it will stop after 1 hour. How do you know? Okay, let's let it run for 1 hour. After 1 hour, you come back and you say, well, it's still running. Yeah, but what about 100 days? Okay, let's let it run for 100 days, etc. Infinitely. You see, you cannot, by analyzing the program, absolutely predict if it will hang or not. I know there are some tools for software engineering that try to estimate this, but this is an estimation. The real thing is that if you want to predict if a program will hang or not, you cannot do that. However, think the reverse. You are asked to program something that will say, yes, this program finishes okay. And then the question is the reverse question, you see? Then you run this program, it finishes correctly, and then you go back and say, yeah, it works. Then you can say the program works, but you cannot say if the program will hang. Because if it hangs, your program that is trying to evaluate this will hang as well. That's a non-decidable Turing language, that you can say if the program will finish correctly, but you cannot say if the program will not finish ever. So this is a central problem of computing theory, that there are some things that by definition you cannot obtain. You can, by mathematical definition, you cannot implement. It's not that you have a memory limitation, space limitation, but theoretical limitation. And that is why we invited our friend today here, Bertrand Russell, because he tried to automatize all this reasoning, or to automate all this reasoning into formal mathematics, because he wanted to be able to represent any mathematics. That's why it's mathematics, not mathematic or maths in plural, because there are so many mathematics, logics that are considered as part of maths, or calculus, first order logic predicates, etc. There are so many. So he wanted to provide for a single theory of representation that was so powerful that everything inside it could be demonstrated. He wanted to find the value for truth and falsehood for anything that is stated in that language. Then why this is connected with us? Because precisely that's not computable. And we can demonstrate it by using Turing machines and other elements. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about. So are we ready? Okay, so I'll start presentation. So before you start sleeping, anyway, if you start sleeping, I wish you happy dreams. Okay, so this talk is called Strange Loops. Sorry, it's in Spanish, but I think it's pretty understandable. And it's based on the book by Douglas Hofstadter. Oh, it should be here. No, that book is not here. Let me pick it up. Okay, sorry for bringing too many books today, but maybe today is our Happy Book Friends Day. So this talk I will give you today is based on this book. This is by Douglas Hofstadter, and we will begin by talking about him, and highly recommendable this lecture. Okay, so now that we have invited also Douglas Hofstadter, well, there it is, but it's much better if you see it real, if we can call real a projection in a small little square by 2D. By the way, I'm not sure if you are 3D really. Maybe I'm just imagining you and you are 2D beings that are rendered in some place. So the main question here is why a fragment of matter is able to think in itself. So the question starts like very deep and philosophically, and Douglas Hofstadter was very concerned about this thing of these matters, and it's connected with our subject here. So he wrote another book that probably you have heard of, which is called Gödel, Escher, Bach, or and Bach. Gödel, Escher, and Bach. When he was 34 years old in 1979. So there is Douglas, I don't know if he has 34 years in that picture. However, when he wrote this book, he inserted a lot of things. This is a very heavy book because, not because it has too many pages, but because he adds a lot of references to fables or historic events. And also he makes a lot of word games. So actually, this is a very difficult book to be translated. There was a man, a Mexican guy, that he wanted to translate it. He did it successfully, but he had to go and personally ask Douglas Hofstadter, what the heck did you intend to tell here that I cannot understand? And then after having a research stay, he was able to translate. So you can see translation can be also research. Okay, so this book is not exactly, but it's about the same subject as this one, as The Strange Loop. However, this one is much more easier to read. This you can read as a novel, maybe when you are commuting, but this other, no, you need to study thoroughly. It pays, however, it's worth reading it. And he says, Douglas, that there is an eerie type of chaos that can lurk just behind a facade of order. And yet deep inside the chaos lurks an even eerier type of order. So here is just a quote of the way of thinking of Douglas Hofstadter. So basically what he wanted to find is certain kind of order inside chaos and vice versa. And also here lies the problem of determinism. You will see that if Turing machines are the most powerful machines that we can find, and these machines are deterministic, then also all languages that we can define are deterministic, right? So the idea that there are some languages that are non-deterministic, it's just connected with the way we are trying to process them. Said in another way, the push-down automata, we say they are inherently non-deterministic, but that's the machine, not the language. I have someone in the waiting room. Let me disable waiting room. Okay, so here we have an example of chaos with certain beauty. These are called Lyapunov fractals, and the formula for calculating them is relatively simple, and it's just about complex numbers. That complex numbers are just like a R squared, so like you have 2 dimensions and certain properties. So here you see beauty in these iterations that are chaos. And also he wrote a different book, which is called Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies. And he wanted to study how alphabets are created, why at some point of evolution they stop and they are enough to differentiate different letters, and why don't they evolve more into a more complex characters, such as those at the lower part, because it will be too complicated and people tend to use some economy in their characters or the creation they use for communicate. So that book is here. So sorry for being so, how to say, to show you my books, but well, I'm happy to share with you. And then, and he says, what in the bottom was fueling me, my true passion, was the strong desire to unveil the secrets of human thinking, to try to understand how it was possible that billions of mute and synchronized sparks that occur at every second inside a human skull allow a person to think, to perceive, to remember, to create, to imagine, and to feel. So in that times, we are talking about 1979 or before 1975, he started to read about brain, to study several foreign languages, to explore the exotic writing systems of several countries, and to try to think of ways to get a computer to generate coherent phrases and grammatically complex in English and other languages. And he was also taking a wonderful and stimulating course of psychology. All these ways, all these paths were reaching to the dense nebulous of questions about the relationship between mind and mechanism, between mentality and mechanicity. So, well, this is also a philosophical question. Those minds can be mechanized. Some people say yes, some people say no, and those that say no, well, they need to resort to some kind of metaphysics or to assume something outside of this world. So as we cannot prove either, maybe the easiest for us as computer studying people is to assume that yes, at least some parts or most of it can be mechanized, so that we can implement a mind in a Turing machine, which of course is very bold to say that, but well, we need to do some assumptions that it's possible. So this is about all these questions relating the human part to the Turing machine. So here is his wife in 1993. They are very happy together, and they are also doing an infinite loop, because he is touching the nose of the person that is touching the nose that is touching the nose of the person that is touching, etc. And also they like this picture a lot because it was an infinite symbol. You can see the shape of the infinite symbol. So they like to play a lot with this. And well, this is a very sad part, because not long after that, she developed a brain tumor, and unfortunately she died. So he, very, very sad, wrote a book for her, Le Tombeau de Marot, and he tried to find some reasons to be able to cope with his loss. And however, he concluded that you cannot change the past, and even if you try to turn that, you can't change the past. So there is no way to change it. And yes, there is no trick. It really says the same in one sense and another sense. Okay, so after these very sad moments, he started to think, well, then what makes a human? What a picture means? And in this case, he was thinking, well, I have this picture of this man, but for me, it's not much more than pixels, or for a computer, they're just pixels. However, for us humans, it depends a lot. Who was that person for us? What represented? How did we interacted with him? What did he said to us? Then that makes this person important, and then this picture makes us feel something. Just as here, if you listen, if you see this notation, maybe you cannot read it, and it's okay, but it won't mean anything for you. It will mean something when someone interprets it, when someone that can read it interprets it. So he started thinking about what a symbol meant, a symbol for a person, a symbol for a cherished object, maybe, I don't know, a book or even something you like, and how the importance of them relied on the experience, the particular experience of each one. So he concluded, each one of these small geometries, he's talking about the nodes, has an exceptional power of making live in our brains a small fragment of the experiences, intimate experiences of another human being. So he was thinking on something a bit strange, like as he was very sad because he lost his wife, then he was thinking, well, but I can remember what would she say if, I don't know, if I take my coffee in a red cup. She would say, oh, you love that red cup, or something like that. So he realized that he was kind of executing part of her code inside of his brain. So he went further and was thinking like, well, then I can sort of emulate Marot, his wife. If I can emulate her, then what's that makes her is the physical part that is running her software, because he was computer studying person, or maybe is the software that can be installed, or at least partially, on different parts. So, well, of course, we cannot just think so cold in terms of that we are just software. However, what we realized is that there are parts of the people that we are running inside us, and it will happen even between us. So maybe at certain point, I will remember one of you and say, well, here Emilio would ask something, no? For example. And then, well, I am executing part or trying to emulate the way of Emilio's thinking. And the same with all of you. Well, so he then was motivated to ask himself, then, what is consciousness? And he thought that there was not just a sharp separation between consciousness or conscious and non-conscious. So he drew this table here, and he thought that normal adults have a lot of consciousness, and going downwards, we have cats, we have rabbits, chicken, and less than that, we have fish, goldfish, bees, mosquitoes, and other smaller insects such as ácaros or microbian things, and virus, and even atoms that are said that don't have any consciousness. Unless, of course, we start thinking metaphysically, right? And think that atoms have some sort of universal consciousness, etc. But we are not talking about that. So, well, he started thinking about this, but then what is a brain structure? Because maybe we can think of a brain structure as amino acid, neurotransmitters, ADN, ARN, synapses, dendrites, or maybe we can go in a more global way and think on neurons or Hebbian neural sets, or the cortex, the visual cortex, the 19th area of the visual cortex, the whole visual cortex, or the whole left hemisphere. So we are talking about greater and greater areas, or we could talk about what is stored inside our brain. So, for example, where is located the concept of dog, or how are dog and barking associated? Where are the object files stored, or where are frames, as Marvin Minsky proposes? Marvin Minsky, you will study him or his work when you study artificial intelligence and the story of artificial intelligence in a subject which you will have later, artificial intelligence and society, or the packages of organizing memory, etc. So you have a lot of things here, and where are all these things stored? So so far we have more questions than answers. So even here it is Sigmund Freud, ego, the id, and the superego. So we could spend classes and classes studying just each one of the things that are mentioned here. So he was just like very excited, thinking on several different things, and with more questions than answers. So finally, he thought that it's different to study the neurons by themselves, because it's like studying or judging a book by its cover. For example, you can see something like this, but you don't have a clue of what is inside. You need to open, you need to interpret it, you need to read it. So the same with the brain. If you study the areas physically, it's very difficult to know what they are doing. So this is also an eternal struggle between neuroscience and psychology. But there's a bridge, but it's very difficult to understand the parts that are making them. So I'm busy. So another different analogy is between heart and brain. That we can see heart is like a pump, and then what is a brain? Well, this is a machine to think. What is the main purpose of the brain? So this is also called the functionalist way of regarding things. What are they for? What can we use them for? And finally, he says we cannot get lost in the leaves if we want to understand the whole forest. So there's the forest. So these are, maybe he's just wandering around these ideas at the beginning of the book. And then he starts going more in a particular set of thinking by talking about, can hygienic paper think? And well, we start with a lot of problems here. First, what do we understand by thinking? So he says, Turing machines are ideal computers, because not ideal in the sense that they are the best you can get, but that they are theoretical machines that are extremely simple, whose memory consists of a tape infinitely large, which is the same arbitrarily long, in which cells are stored, and each one of them is a simple cell that is blank or has a symbol. Okay, so here he starts talking about our subject. That is why we are talking about this book in this course. And they can be built with any kind of material. So there was a professor whose name was Nasuno, Figueroa Nasuno. He was a colleague at the Center for Computing Research, and he was also playing jokes with his students. So when we taught this subject, he asked their students, okay, so please go tomorrow to the Plaza de la Tecnología, which is the place that everyone can get a lot of electronics and they are cheap. So I want you to go to that place and bring me a Turing machine. So the poor students just went all day walking, asking all the stores, because it's a big place, asking, hey, can you give me a Turing machine, please? No, my little friend, we don't have that here. Please go to the next store. So poor of them. So when I see this, well, I think, well, maybe they could have something like this. Yeah, this is a Turing machine, but no infinite tape either. You cannot build that. However, he was just playing a joke on them, because, you know, Turing machines are just theoretical machines. But you can build them also by using a Lego, right? Like this one, where you are using two symbols, 0 and 1, as I told you before. You don't need more symbols than 0, 1, and blank. Blank is very important, but the language needs only zeros and ones, and they are represented by the inclination each one of these pieces has, and it works. This machine works. And also we can compute on water. What about the MONIAC, the Monetary National Income Analog Computer, also known as the Philips Hydraulic Computer, or the Financephalograph, which it was a very nice machine, because it allowed, you say, for example, what will happen if we cut money, if we cut funding for science? Yeah. and then give all this money to the poor people without asking them to do anything in return. Yeah, good idea. The poor people will be very happy just to receive a scholarship, right? Yeah, let's do that. And what if we spend all of our project money into very expensive projects that won't be able to finish on time because they are so expensive and we don't have the expertise? Yeah. Well, this kind of machine supported these questions and give a prediction. In this case, the prediction would be your economy will fall down and fall down until people depends exclusively on you. Yeah, that's what I want. People depend on me. Yeah, then let's do all that. Well, the demoniac is not the bad part of all this, but well, you could calculate that kind of things. Also, you could calculate what happens if you used money, if you invested money in science, in education, in projects for people to work, etc. Well, and the interesting part is that it worked on water. It calculated by using drops of water. And finally, the amount of money a country has was represented by a certain amount of water. So this was the financephalograph. And it was used for helping people to take wise decisions. And yes, the Turing machine, of course. And here is a manga of Alan Turing saying a Turing machine, Tsukuta, so sugoi. Okay, so is mine a Turing machine? Well, that's precisely the question we are asking here. So probably Turing, yes, his mind had inside a robot programming himself, and that was how he came out with this idea, right? So returning to Douglas Hofstadter, it's very important to treat brain as a multi-level system if you want to achieve the smallest advance in the analysis of mental phenomena such as perception, concepts, thinking, consciousness, what is the I, the freedom, free will, etc. Trying to localize a concept, a sensation, or a memory in a single neuron has no sense, even localizing to higher structural level. However, not long after the publication of this book, there was a study which is called the Jennifer Aniston neuron. Have you heard of Jennifer Aniston? I think yes. But have you heard about the Jennifer Aniston neuron? It's not that she had just a single neuron, right? She's a bit smarter than that. However, what we are referring here is an experiment that was carried out on a set of people. And one of them had, there are these ways of measuring very particularly close the activity of a neuron. So it's an insertion. It's not just reading EEG signals from outside the brain. Just you need to go inside deep and then have a very, very thin needle. And then you are measuring, you are reaching almost a neuron. Well, this guy had the particularity that when we was stimulated with anything that was related to Jennifer Aniston, a particular neuron was excited, was sending signals. And even if he was stimulated with other kind of images, he just didn't react. So they concluded he had kind of a Jennifer Aniston neuron because it was just excited when he observed movies, pictures, even if she was turning Jennifer Aniston, he had a neuron of Jennifer Aniston. So this is very interesting because it makes us think, what are concepts for us? Is there a single neuron for something or somebody that we really care about a lot? Maybe, but we need to study much more all of these things because not
love.
Yes,
Love.
what is love? Yeah, very, very difficult. And also other emotions. What is fear? What is excitement? Well, yes, there are a lot of things to study here. And not everyone allows their brain to be perforated in order to have these kind of studies, right? I wouldn't let to do that, but I don't know. So here here is a friend that did this experiment. His name is Rodrigo Quiroga. Yes, he is from Argentina. And if you want to read more about this, you can follow the link that is shown here below. So it's not really recent news. It's from 2013. However, I think it's still highly relevant. And also to the right part, we have some EEG reading professional equipment that you can see. It has a lot of sensors. And also he wrote a very interesting book. I don't have that here with me, but it's called Borges y la Memoria. It should be, there should be a translation somewhere. If you are interested and you cannot obtain it, you can ask me and I will try to get it from Sci-Hub. No, I don't think it's on Sci-Hub. So here he starts talking about Funes el Memorioso. Funes was a very ancient man from the Greek time, and he couldn't forget anything. So he remembered everything he saw and he lived. And that was terrible, terrible. Imagine you couldn't forget anything and that you remember exactly the words that had been said. And even you can remember good things, nice things, but also you can remember awful things that some people said to you or that happened to you. So sometimes in order to process things, we need to forget, or at least they shouldn't be present so strongly in our mind. Well, this is a recommendation. Let's go back to Douglas Hofstadter. Well, not yet, but here there are some other studies that have been done where they try to map semantically by using, in this case, it is fMRI, magnetic resonance, and this work found some places where concepts are stored. So it seems that there is a kind of an ontology stored inside our brains. At least, yes, physically, as this shows in some parts of the brain. Okay, so now let's keep on going. So this was like the neurosciences space. So what thing is yo? What thing is me? Or what is I? So the fears, the dreams, pains and happiness, ideas and beliefs, interests and doubts, whimsical or envy, memories and ambitions, nostalgia or empathy, feelings of shame and geniality. Though these things have any goal in the world of physical objects, are these abstractions any have these abstractions any power to cause things? Can they start something, or they are only thinking, thoughts? Can an eye that is fuzzy and cannot be touched to change the behavior of physical objects such as electron or muscles or books in this case? Well, maybe if we take this question in terms of what to be a human is, maybe we can say yes, because of our thoughts, we move things. Maybe not with the mind, like I want things to fly away and just because I'm thinking I'm making this cup fly. No, right? Because I can grab it with my hand, and because I thought it, then I make it move. But it started as thought. So we have the brain thinking on itself, and this is a Klein bottle that is the 3D equivalent as the Möbius strip. The Möbius strip is a tape that has only one side, and this is a surface that has only one side. So this is very strange because you are always inside or outside. It has no outside and inside. So it's like the brain thinking on itself. And this is a key point because maybe you will think, oh my God, I came to study theory of computation not to deal with brain, not to deal with philosophy, not to deal with all these things. And why this teacher is telling us all this? Well, because if we want to think in terms of mechanized thought, and programming computers is one way of trying to do so, because we want to do the mechanical operations, then we need to study this, to which extent a system that we program will be able to think on itself. It's not consciousness itself, by itself, but just what kind of things can be achievable within these kind of systems. Can a system see itself? This is where the loop lies. This is why the book is called A Strange Loop. So let's go on. Loops. So one of the easiest loops you may have experienced is when you go to a bathroom and take a picture of the infinite, right? When there are two mirrors facing each other, then you take a glimpse into the infinite. And it's a bit scary, but it's also interesting. So if you haven't done so, do it. It's interesting. And also, well, this is very simple, but Douglas Hofstadter was very concerned about this kind of objects. Yeah, it's just a box. Well, but it's a box where each one of the top is lying on the other top, which is lying on the other top, on the other top. And at the end, you cannot open it easily because they are all making force together. They are strong together, but there is not the main one. What is the main top? No, all of them are working here. And also here, but it's simpler, but it's the same, that each pencil is supporting another pencil, which is in turn supported by another pencil. And maybe not so surprising as another one that we will see afterwards, where they are just standing each one on another. So, well, here you see Bertrand Russell, the friend that I presented you before. Here you see the name Bertrand Russell here. And what is the jump from the idea that we saw before? The problem is that whenever you have some kind of infinite, then you will have problems. So for certain for certain moments, there was like a phobia to the infinite things. So to avoid these kind of things, let me see, I think there is, I don't know. There was this kind of phobia to the infinite because people try to avoid loops. So whenever you had a loop, for example, a loop definition, a chicken is an animal that yields eggs. An egg is the product of a hen. Then, well, as the classical saying says, what was first, the chicken or the hen, right? If you sort them by Unicode, then you can have the answer, but only in that sense. So the question is, here we want to avoid loops. In order to avoid loops, then our friend Bertrand Russell, with the help of Whitehead, developed this theory of types. You know, the problem within the hen and the egg is that they are at the same level. If we want to avoid this circular definition, then we need to define hen in terms of something below. We have some primitives. And then we can say, okay, hen is an animal because animal is a primitive, and egg is a product, okay. And then we cannot do references to the same level. Then hence we avoid loops very successfully. So Russell was trying to define all mathematics by using set theory. And there were some things that have circular definitions, such as the set of all sets that are not contained to themselves. Well, there's a paradox here. And also my friend Nasuno said in Spanish, it's una parajoda, no? Because it disturbs you. Okay, but in English it's paradox. So this is like when we said things like this, at what moment, how do we say montón? help.
A lot of.
Yeah, but as a substantive, as a noun.
Maybe if you translate the rest, we would recognize the.
Cúmulo. You can use a bunch.
A bunch, yeah, I like that one. When a bunch is not a bunch anymore, when we are trying to take grains out of it. So, well, just I leave you meditating and I will answer the door, sorry. Okay, so maybe you have an answer now or no answer?
I was thinking that when you take another bunch from the bunch and you just left with some grains on the table, maybe.
But can two stacked up grains be a bunch?
Maybe.
Is a single grain a bunch or not?
No.
No.
Well, maybe that's an answer. Well, you can keep thinking on this. Or for example, when all parts of a ship have been replaced, is it still the same ship? And this is also an equivalent of a famous phrase by Lao Tse, which says, the river is carrying always different water, but it's the same river. And also regarding human beings, that constantly our cells are being replaced. At what moment are we still ourselves? Because most of our cells have been replaced. Is it true something, some assertion about something that it does not exist? For example, if I say unicorns are rainbow color, you can say, yeah, it's true, right? It doesn't exist, but it lives in a fantasy world. So you can define certain worlds when you can say some things that are true or are not true, but then it depends on its frame. Any name that designs an object can convert itself into an object with a new name that designs or that says its sense. It's something like a pointer to a pointer. You can have a variable that points to another variable and this variable has a name. and you can have also a pointer to a variable, and this has in turn a name. So it's easier. I think it's easier to explain that for you that are programmers than to other people that don't know programming. So using pointers helps a lot to understand these kind of things. So if you struggled at certain point by learning pointers, well, now it pays. It's worth learning pointers. And this last one, which I think is the most important of all paradoxes, because the previous ones, maybe you can, as you tell me, maybe just a bunch is not a bunch anymore when it was just one grain of sand in it. Well, that can be an answer. But this last one is truly a paradox that cannot be answered. And it says, the barber of the town that shaves all those that in that town cannot shave themselves. The question is, does this barber shaves himself or not? Because if he shaves himself, then it is not a barber, because the barber shaves only those that cannot shave themselves. And if he shaves himself, then he cannot shave himself. How come? And if he does not shave himself, then he's a barber, because he shaves others that then he should be other, because he only shaves other that cannot shave themselves. Then again we enter into contradiction. So whatever we choose, if the barber shaves himself or not, we find a contradiction. This is a paradox, which is also very similar to when I am saying I am lying in this moment. Is this true or not? If you say yes, well, then it's not true that I'm lying, then I'm saying the truth. If you say yes, this is a lie. No, if you say no, then it's true. And if it's true, then I'm lying. Then if I'm lying, it cannot be true. And then loop. You see, we have a loop in this kind of paradoxes. So of all these different kind of paradoxes, the one that we will pay more attention to is the last one. This is the most important one.
Could we exist another barber in the town?
Yeah, that's like, can we add another stack to the push down automaton?
Yeah, could be.
Yes, you can, but in this case, by definition, there is only one barber.
This is
well, okay, for the second, yes.
This is a kind of example of the I don't know how you say, stop problem or
Halting problem. Yes, we are going into that direction. Yes, inevitably we are going into that direction. All this is to motivate the halting problem, but yes. So spoiler. Okay. Don't worry, you ask. So you can see there is a phobia to loops. Why? Because loops cause these kind of contradictions. That's why Bertrand Russell designed a whole book to, and this is not the only one. There is another with Russell and Whitehead that is 2 volumes long. So here it is, the Principia Mathematica. And with this book, he stated that there could not be sets that could be included in themselves. So are all assertions paradoxes? Well, the answer is no, but let's see like what kind of assertions. For example, what's wrong with the word being of the word category? So is word a word? Yeah, right. So shouldn't be anything wrong. Or this kind of font is Century Gothic. Yeah, you can say yes or not with no problem. Or this phrase has 12 syllables, no problem. Or, well, in Spanish it works. In English it won't work, but for my translation. However, there are some examples from Douglas Hofstadter that work in English. The last word of this phrase is a noun of 6 letters, L-E-T-T-E-R, well, 1 S more, but in Spanish it works. the ninth word of this phrase has 10 letters. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And what happens here? There is no ninth word in this phrase. What would you say? Is this true or not?
Well, it depends on how we represent the sentence.
Just like that written, or
Maybe the sentence is an infinite amount of like cells, where each cells can either be some word or like an empty word that doesn't have letters. And in that case, ninth word is
empty word.
a word with
Blank word.
0 letters.
Okay, then you can say it's false. Yeah, right. It depends on implementation, and you can find a blank word and say 0 letters, and you can say it's false. Yeah, that's one way of saying it. And also, you see, here we are asking if we can say things about, or we can do assertions about things that exist or not exist. So in this case, it seems yes, even if it doesn't exist because we have some kind of implementation, we can think of a way of giving an answer. And what about the 10th word of this phrase has 9 letters? Well, I think it's the same. There is no 10th word. And also there are some more examples taken from the book. It says, if the meanings of true and false are interchanged, this phrase wouldn't be false. And if you interchange them, then you can see it's true. In this moment, I'm lying. Well, I have exemplified this before. And these two are together. Says the next phrase is identical to this one, except that the words next and before have been interchanged, and the expressions identical to and except for have been substituted by different from and due to, respectively. And well, it says the same. The previous phrase is different from this one because the words before and next have been interchanged, and the expressions different from and due to have been substituted by identical to and except in, respectively. And well, if you study them carefully, because you need some time to have the 20 fall on you, que les caiga el 20, you have to spend some time so that you realize the meaning of this. Sorry for the expression caer el 20. It's like, I don't know if you use them in Colombia, Camilo. What? Sorry?
It's what word?
Caer el 20.
I don't know the meaning.
Well, literally, it means to the 20 to fall down. A 20, it was a coin that was used in the very, very old telephones. So you inserted this coin, and you don't have a line. You cannot listen to anything until you bang it, and then the coin falls down, and yeah, okay, now the coin has fallen. So to say the 20 is like 20 cents. The 20 cents, now it has fallen to me. It means now I understand. Sorry for these colloquial expressions. Okay, more of these words. This analogy is like trying to raise yourself by pulling your own ears. It reminds me to this story. I don't know if you have heard of Munchausen Baron. Yeah, good. So it's this one, right? That he is trying to pull himself out by taking himself. Well, but this is an analogy. So how can you say if this analogy is true or not? Because it's true, it's because it's talking about itself, is trying to put itself outside by itself. So we could say it's true, but it's very different to say that. The second says this with spelling error. This H shouldn't be here. This phrase is not self-referent because this with error is not a word. And this is true. If dreams would be reality, the previous statement of this conditional proposition would be true. Well, so you can say, yeah, it's true. And this one, this phrase lacks word each 3, however, understands perfectly. There is a word missing in each one, and you can understand perfectly and well, then it's true. If this phrase is understandable, is not understandable for you, change a word in it. Because instead of word, it says something else. It says, in Spanish, it says patata. It says, oh, I forgot how to say patata. It doesn't matter in Spanish. This later. How come is that this sentence is not saying the same than what this sentence says? In English, it doesn't work so nice as in Spanish because the esta oración is esta oración, this sentence. How come this sentence does not the same than this sentence? So it's the same, this sentence and this sentence. But because they are in different contexts, they are saying something different. So you see, and the question is, how come this happens? Well, too much things to think about. So sorry to make you think on all of these things. And this is also very interesting. I cannot translate it properly. I will just read it. It says, ea, I, o, oie, o, I, iuie, o, ea, o, I.
Looks like a broken encoding.
Yes. However, I think some of you can understand what it says. If you look to the second one, it says, so please someone tell me what the second phrase says, and with this information, you will be able to know what the first phrase says.
It says zaza bzz bzz.
Yeah, very similar.
Esta frase no contiene vocales. Hasta ahí me
La
quedé.
precedente no lleva consonante.
Excellent. Yeah, it says this phrase does not contain vowels, and the preceding one does not use consonants. And with this, you know what the first one says. Please try it. So try to think in terms of this one, and this is very similar. So if this meaning is, this phrase does not contain vowels, how do you think this is lacking? This phrase does not contain what? In Spanish, of course.
Consonantes.
Then you can read the whole phrase.
Esta frase no contiene consonantes y la siguiente no lleva vocales.
Excellent. Yeah, that's it. So you see how they are complementing each other, right? Because you understand this one, then you are able to understand this one, and you can say both are true as well. And the last one says this is not a pangram because it contains blah, 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 blah. It's counting. It has 25 A's, 2 B's, 19 C's, 8 D's, 60 E, 3 F, etc. It counts for each one of the letters A, B, C, D, E until Z, and it says, but it's lacking W and X. So despite everything here, the count is correct. If you count how many G's are here, you will find exactly 4. You can find exactly 4 H's. You can find 1 J. And this is true. However, it says, but W and X are missing. So then that makes true that this is not a pangram, because a pangram should include all letters. So you see here, Hofstadter is playing with our minds. Just to introduce why or how can we do or say things that are contradictory. And this is not all. He wasn't not just playing with letters, but also with video. So maybe he took some psychedelic thing and he did something called video traveling. Well, what he did was only to take a camera and then point it to a monitor. Maybe some of you have done this as kids, and your parents told you, stop doing that, you will break my camera, my new camera. But anyway, it was fun and interesting because you have here again the infinite. And the infinite is just cut, it's just because you have a saturation here. Oversaturation, and then you cannot see much more, and also resolution is stopping you from seeing the infinite. But what he saw also is that if you moved the camera from left to the right, then you could find that the movement propagated temporarily. So he observed all this, and also inserting an element, and he saw how his hand was propagated also into the infinite. So these are also infinite loops, and that's why he talks about them in this book. And here he is playing with his hand, introducing it, and well, you can maybe call this an interesting way of doing art as well. But he was fascinating with the loops. As you can see, Douglas Hofstadter was traveling into the infinite, or at least that's what we thought. And he says that fidelity, an image with enough fidelity of something that changes has to be changing as well. Movement generates more movement in an endless process. And here I have some images to hypnotize you, and then to take this moment to say, you will finish your courses successfully. You will end up with a 10 in theory of computation, and you will send all your homework, and it will have no errors. Okay, so now that you have been successfully programmed, there are more of these stills of Douglas Hofstadter. He includes them inside the book. And also there are some other related things. Perhaps you know Benoit Mandelbrot, and he says bottomless wonders spring from simple rules which are repeated without end. In a very similar fashion than the fractals we said before, those ones of Lyapunov, he devised a very simple formula that is the one at the top, which is a very simple calculation of a complex number squared and plus a certain constant. And with that, he was able to generate this. Probably you have seen the Mandelbrot fractal, and you can go deep, deep, deep into it, and then you will find again the same shape, kind of an infinite loop as well. So here it is, if you want to get dizzy again. You can see how the patterns get repeated. You find again and again the same construction, and despite the formula is quite simple. not again. And also you can find very interesting patterns in simpler rules, such as this one. For example, you have here a linear automata where each state is calculated based on the previous state. And you can also have a bidimensional automata where it seems that they have some kind of life, but they are just interacting with what they are finding. And this makes us think, are there some viruses, for example, that are like proteins only interacting with their surroundings? Is maybe the universe a gigantic automaton that is calculating its state based on the previous state? Well, no answers here. And also this one that looks also like a video game, or we can see like particles of life, but it's just a simulation. Just each one of the pixels is calculating its next state based on their surrounding. And it gives a very interesting effect with a very simple rule. So you can see these are called cellular automata, which are different from our automata in this class. So don't get confused. And the rules work a little bit differently. So automata is not the same as cellular automata, but the fact that they are calculating their next state based on the previous state is the same. And it looks like something like this. It looks like the cell is trying to eat that part, that protein, having some kind of intelligence because it's going after it. However, it has no brain. It has no sensors. It's just reacting chemically to it. So very interestingly, perhaps life is a bit more deterministic than we think. However, much more complex processes are running in the brain or more complex living beings. Okay, so here we start talking about the perceptual loop as the seed of how can we say, of oneness, of oneselfness. And here Douglas Hofstadter says, because we need to perceive external objects, then whenever I'm looking, for example, I'm looking to this cup, and if I look to this cup and I do this, then I need to know that this thing that is blocking me from seeing this cup is part of me. I need to be conscious of my hand blocking the view of the cup. If I'm not conscious that this part is mine, then I may think that it is part of the cup, or that this thing that is holding the cup also may be part of the cup. If I'm not conscious that this is my arm, that I can feel something here and here I cannot feel. So because I'm able to perceive at a certain point my surroundings, then I need to perceive myself as well. I will see this as part of me, see as part of me. If I concentrate enough, I can see my nose, and I need to ignore it because I know it's part of me and it's not something that is following me within my sight. So what Hofstadter says is that because we are so advanced living beings that are able to perceive the surroundings, that makes us consciousness or conscious in turn of what are we. Because if I perceive the external world, then I have to perceive myself. That's it. And it says this is not extraordinary or miraculous. It's just an obvious consequence of the aptitude to perceive. So this is also a very interesting clue on how consciousness is emerging. And of course, consciousness takes much more complex patterns afterwards, but it begins like this. It begins on the perceptual loop. So here we have the image that he enjoyed a lot because they started playing this strange game. So you can say thanks that we are just behind a screen, because otherwise we could say, yeah, let's play this. And you say, no, it's horrible. No, actually, I have never played this. It looks fun, but it also maybe you need a lot of confidence with the people over there. But the interesting thing is everyone is sitting on the person behind. sitting on the person behind, sitting on the person behind, and no one is sitting onto anything. There are no chairs. And they are not doing any effort. They are comfortably sitting with no muscular effort. So here the question, or the interesting part, is how come everyone is sitting on someone without no one sitting on anything? It looks just like a magic, like the tops of the box that are doing force into each other, right? And here we have, can someone tell me who drew this sketch?
Escher?
Yeah, right. And that's why the first book of Douglas was called Gödel, Escher, y Bach. Well, here is the Escher part. There won't be a Bach part, but what we see here is a loop. There's a hand that is drawing a hand that draws a hand, etc. And of course, this one, which looks like an eternal machine, because the water that is falling from this waterfall allows this wheel to turn, and this will move the water upwards so that it will be able to fall down again. So this is an example of a perpetual machine that, well, in theory, it would work. It doesn't work because there is dissipation of energy in heat, or maybe some water spills out. And because of this small loss of energy, this won't work. So that's why we don't have this kind of machines. But there is a loop here. And also this drawing is by MC Escher. And well, for the last part, I'm sorry for saying too many strange things to you, but this is the strange loop. Here we will start talking about the ingenious librarian. Here we have this old man, which is called Barry, and he was born in 1904 in Oxford. And he liked to play a game like those that we have been playing before. And he says, what is the description, the shorter description of any integer number? If we draw this number 10, you can say it's 10. And what about 98? Well, 98 or 98 in English. But how if we say 100 minus 2? Which one is shorter? Well, in this case, I think by syllables, 98 or 100 menos 2. In Spanish, 100 menos 2, 100 minus 2 is shorter. Or what about larger numbers? 1,011,000. What is the smallest number of syllables necessary to describe number 1,737? So as larger is a number, is larger is its description. So for example, we have a number 10 is very short, but how about 100? In Spanish is the same length. Or even longer, we have 1,000, which is 1,000 and has only 3 letters. So not necessarily the larger the number, the larger its description. And what about 777,777,000? So it has in Spanish 21 syllables. But we can write it shorter if we say 777 multiplied by 1,001. In Spanish, it has 14 syllables. Or even we can say 10,101 multiplied by 77, and it has 13 syllables. Can we compress it even more? Then we can reach 111,111 times 7. Wow, we are reaching 12 syllables. Or the number formed by 7 sevens. It has 11 syllables. Or what about 7,007 multiplied by 111? It has only 10 syllables. So you can see how creepy is this game, because you can try to imagine the shortest description for any number, and well, you can think about it. You can play it, of course, also in English. And then here came this Barry with the Barry number. And he thought, what if there is a number that is the smallest number whose description has at least 30 syllables? What would be that B number? And this is worse than you think. This question is worse than you think, because it's very difficult to answer, because 30 syllables, there are too many. How big is B? So maybe you can think of the Avogadro number, which is a very, very large number, which is 6 to the power 6 multiplied by 10 times to the power of 23. It's only 8 syllables, and the number is humongous. And it's not easy to find a number so large that no matter how we write it, at least requires 30 syllables. So maybe you can think about a very complex number, right? Like 1,223,000, blah, 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 until you achieve 30 syllables. However, remember that you can use multiplication. You can use other tricks to write it shorter. So B is the first integer whose description cannot be compressed to less than 30 syllables. That's what we are looking for. The integer, the smallest integer whose description has less than 30 syllables. And if we count the syllables for this, both in English and Spanish, it has 24. And you see what we are doing here? We are asking for something whose description has less syllables than its definition allows. So we are describing this smallest number whose description contains at least 30 syllables with 24 syllables. Then in our question, we are contradicting the answer. We cannot answer this. That's why the librarian Berry was so evil. So the definition of B is the phrase written in italics. Yeah, so this is how we feel now, or how we should feel. Well, so we still have some more minutes to close this properly, I hope. We tend to use this kind of undefined or undefinable things. We can say his behavior was unqualifiable, or the wheels of the truck were undescriptively large. We are saying they are undescriptible, however, we are telling some description. I cannot tell you how much I thank you, but you are telling them, right? And to this point, also Douglas started asking, how can we measure the interestingness of a number? For example, 0 is interesting because 0 multiplied by any number yields 0. 1 is interesting because 1 multiplied by any number yields the same number. 2 is interesting because it's the smallest odd number. 3 is the number of sides of the simplest bidimensional polygon, the triangle. 4 is interesting because it's the first composed number. 5, among other things, is the number of polyhedron, regular polyhedron in 3 dimensions. 6 is interesting because it's the factorial of 4, 3, 2, and 1. And when do we have the first non-interesting number? What would be that number? And again, we are asking, what is the first non-interesting number? And if we find it, then we can say 62, 1029, one, you know. However, we have the first integer that is not interesting. Wait, that makes it interesting, you see? So we are asking for something that cannot be accomplished as well. We are entering into a paradox again. And just because we are using loops. Now you understand why loops were so avoidable by Russell and Whitehead. Yeah, so, well, this is the state of the mind at this point. Okay, so here he comes, Bertrand Russell. He tried to dismantle paradox by saying that the problem is that describable is being used wrong in mathematical context. Then he made a hierarchy of types for describing things. So there were these descriptions of level 0, which were arithmetical concepts. Then level 1 used arithmetics and referred to level 0. Level 2, arithmetics and descriptions of level 0 and 1. So you can see all descriptions were based on descriptions of more basic levels. Then there is no problem with descriptability. So this is the hierarchy type anti-Berry, because we don't want a Berry to come again with descriptions that we cannot accomplish. So down with the language. Why? Because natural language is ambiguous and you can tell anything, a lot of things just by saying it the same way. 9 cubed plus 48 multiplied 10 times cube plus 1. Well, depending on how you use parentheses, because language has no parentheses, it will yield you different results. You can try it by taking the description and doing different arithmetics. Or what is the number of different languages that have been talked once on Earth? Oh my God, what makes a language a distinct language? Maybe my neighbor uses some words that I don't use. Is that a language or is that a variant? Or how many words have to be different for a language to say that it's different to another one? How can we count this? This cannot be counted. It's very difficult to answer. The number of celestial bodies in the solar system. Oh my God, should I count the asteroids one by one? Should I count the small particles that conform the rings of Saturn? Each one of them cannot count. These are numbers that cannot be said. The number of magical squares of 4 times 4 it depends also on how many different ways you calculate them. The number of interesting integers less than 100. Well, it depends on how do you call interesting. What is interesting? Even if we are restricting to just 100. So also we have a problem with semiotics here. Semiotics is the science that studies expressiveness, what something means. And here we have a very interesting example that I think you saw it on the pasarela, if you remember properly. Here, the interesting thing is, how do you regard a gun? Do you see as peril, as peligroso, dangerous? Do you see it as dangerous? Well, some people have tried to change it to a non-dangerous. And the last one on doing this was Microsoft. Here you can see, and there are some others that had already done the change, but at least up to 2018, all of them now changed to a water pistol. And here what we are studying about how is the meaning of things or the meaning of representation is called meta-mathematics. It's mathematics about mathematics. And that's what Bertrand Russell tried to do. And this is the notation of Bertrand Russell. You can see it's very friendly. Don't worry, if you want to understand it, you can. Of course you can, because you have all the foundations to understand this. It's set theory, but it's horrible. His notation is horrible. I don't know if on purpose so that no one could understand him, but it has a good meaning. I mean, he tried to represent a lot of things, an universal mathematical representation. So that's why it's very difficult to understand, but it can be understood. And then here we have Gödel in the 30s, early 30s. So here he has 24 years and he is studying magical arts at, I forgot the name of the place where you study magical arts. Well, it's a joke. It's where Harry Potter studied, but I always forget, sorry. Well, no Harry Potter here, no magical arts. He was studying mathematics, and then he comes to the book of Bertrand Russell and starts studying it and finds a way to crack it. Just like hackers or crackers nowadays, he found a way to represent these numbers. For example, if we have something like 0 equals 0, then he assigned a code to 2. Number 2 is 0, equals is represented by number 6, and the third one is represented by 2 again. So it's just a list. 0 is represented by number 2, equal is represented by number 6. You can imagine multiplication is represented by number 7, division number 8, and power of some number is number 9, etc. It's just a code, arbitrarily chosen code. The interesting thing is that these codes were used as exponents for prime numbers. And you know that whenever you code anything in prime numbers like 262, you can recover what were these exponents, because you start looking by dividing by all the prime numbers, and because prime numbers are not, you cannot divide them by a different number, then you can reconstruct the sequence. So if I tell you 72,900, and I tell you it's an assertion code in prime numbers, then you can reconstruct 262. So this number represents 0 equals 0, yeah? So it's just a way of representing it, mapping any assertion to a number, okay? Once you have this representation, then you can think of, oh my God, I have run out of time. Can we use 10, 15 minutes, or you have something? If everybody can, then we extend just for a little while. Is it okay? If for someone is not okay, please tell me.
I didn't listen.
That if we can extend 15 minutes?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
The professor from our next lecture haven't sent us an email yet. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I will abuse of your time and also of your break, because I'm giving no break to you. I'm sorry for that, but I think we are reaching the medular part of this talk today, so I cannot break it. Okay, so let's see how a demonstration is made in Principia Mathematica. Yeah, here. So a demonstration is a series of formulas that conduct from axioms to the formula in question. So that we have an assertion and we want to do a demonstration. You know that a demonstration, a mathematical demonstration, is a series of steps that go from axioms, which are the basic definition, to the actual assertion. And if you can demonstrate it, you can say it's true. If you cannot demonstrate it, then no. And you can say it's true or it is not true. You should be able always to demonstrate it, because it's a machine. For each chain that is demonstrable, that you can demonstrate in the system, there is a primal number that is equivalent. This primal number, numero prima, this primal number corresponds to the way of calculating, as we say before. So for this assertion, 0 equals 0, the primal number that corresponds to it is 72,900. There is no other number that corresponds to it. So whenever I say you 72,900, you will think 0 igual a 0. Okay? Wait, it's the same in Spanish. Okay, so you can do declarations such as 72,900 is a primal number. And it's a primal number, yeah, because you can demonstrate it, or you can say it's true, or it is not a primal number. Then we want to devise a machine that will be called guru. The G from Gödel, and Guru because it's like a guru that tells you the truth of everything in life. So this machine, the task for this machine is, given a number that comes in, to determine if it is a prime number or not, meaning that it's demonstrable or not within the system. Yeah? If it's a primal number, it means you can assign a sequence of symbols that make an assertion. So, well, this seems legit. you can do this and obtain if it is or it is not. The problem comes when you try to codify this machine, Goru, into a primal number G. So let's think about it. You are in a universe where your building blocks are made of Principia Mathematica, things of Bertrand Russell. With these building blocks, you can have a number associated to every assertion. So it's like you have a program, and each program you have done in your life has a number, okay? So the question is to answer, does this number correspond to a program you have programmed in your life? It's easier, right? You can just see your list and say, yes, I programmed this. Okay, now the question is, we need a machine that gives you this answer. And you will program this machine, again, in your favorite language, except Java. Then once you program this, you need to codify this, and you will have another number for this. Yes, this new machine that tells you if all previous programs have were written by you has also a number assigned to it because you programmed it as well, right? Well, that's the number, the primal number G. And now we need to prove the following. Certain G is not a primal number. And then we break the machine. Why? Because in order to demonstrate this, you would need to have never programmed this machine G. So it's tell me what is the machine that you have never programmed to tell me if another program was written by you. Well, say it by this way, you can say, well, how come? I cannot tell you what is that machine I have not programmed because it's not valid. So here the question is a paradox. It's like when I say I am lying. Certain integer G is not a primal number. However, in order to prove this, you need to build the G machine. In order to build it, then this is not true. But if this is not true, then if it's false, then you need to have this machine that says that this machine does not exist.
So we can only check if the number is prime only by machine. Is that a problem?
The problem is that you codify the machine, the Guru machine, this machine that tells you if another machine is a prime number or not.
So this is a machine for checking.
And then you
for checking if the number is prime.
Yes,
that's the only purpose.
Yes, and then the problem is that you codify this machine and then feed it to itself. If you feed it to itself, there's no problem because the machine will say, yes, I'm a prime number because I exist. No problem. The problem is that when you try to say something that certain integrity is not a prime number, it's like telling the machine, demonstrate that you don't exist. It cannot. Why? Because you are asking it to do something, it's impossible because it's contradictory. Or put it in terms of the machine itself, is like proof that this is not an assertion.
So we are asking the machine to check if it itself is a prime number.
It's not. The key point is not, the word not. You are asking the machine to prove that it is not a primal number. So in order to work, it should be a primal number, you see. If it is not a primal number, the machine cannot work, and then you cannot ask it to prove anything. If it's not a primal number, it's not a valid machine. Yes?
No, the machine is like some sort of assertion, right?
Yes.
And the assertion is not. It can be not a primal number. It can be like a composite of many primal numbers, like a multiplication of. So.
Yes, maybe the thing I am missing is that in order to prove this, you need to build a machine that proves this, and that this G is exactly the number that corresponds to this assertion. So it's like saying, this assertion is not valid. This assertion itself, because you are asking it to find a machine or to insert it into the machine that asks you to prove the contrary, that is not a machine. That's why it cannot be done.
So we have to building a machine. With this machine, recognize that a number is prime or not prime.
But
So,
it's not prime, it's primal. Because to know if a number is prime is different. Primal means that the machine can be built. If you have a certain number, for example, there are some numbers that are not primal because they do not correspond to a valid machine. Okay, we have seen that 207, this number that is here, 72,900 is a primal number because there is a machine that corresponds to this number. And in this case, we have seen that because of this simple codification is 0 equals 0. Then if we...
How is it prime if we can like divide it by 100?
But the question here is not that it's prime number itself. 72,900 is not prime. The number is primal because it's composed by prime numbers. So
two different definitions. I confused them.
Primal, not prime. That's why it's important that we say that 72,900 is primal number, not prime, primal. And it's primal because it describes a machine in terms of 262. And 262, because our codification is 0 equals 0. Then, because it corresponds to a valid machine, 72,900 is a primal number. So until here, we are fine. Then, in order to do a demonstration, we need to reach a series of combinations so that you can prove if an assertion is true or not. You can say 72,900 is a primal number, or you can say 72,900 is not a primal number. There's no problem with this because it is or it is not. Okay, now we build a machine, and this machine is given a number that comes in to say if it's a primal number or not. There is no problem with this because we have seen there is a way of building this. Okay, now this machine in turn is written in language that the primal numbers was written, so it has a number associated to it, and this number we can say is G from Guru. This machine is G. Then the question is, there is a certain G which refers to this machine that is not a primal number, and we need to demonstrate this because we would like to see that this is false, right? Why? Well, because you can. That's a good question. Why? Why on earth would we want to do this? Well,
no. Why it's not a primal number?
If
we compose it like some sort of logic,
yes,
it can be encoded as numbers, as multiplication of primal numbers. It should be primal.
You know it is, and you can prove it is. Okay. The problem is that you cannot prove it is not. It sounds like Yoda. The problem here is that when you ask for a certain G that is not a primal number, then you are asking for a machine, yes, that does the contrary. Instead of saying each time, let's think on this way. I think it's easier. Okay, so we have this machine, G. Okay, now let's make H, a different machine. It's H that works the reverse. The machine would activate only if it is not a primal number. And you can think that a machine exists. If this one exists, the other exists, okay? So the H machine then can be programmed also in the same language, the H machine. then you ask for the demonstration that h is not a primal number. Then it should fit to itself.
Wait a second. No. H is a primal number too.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
it's a machine that's built from this logic blocks.
Yes, then it's possible. Then, however, if you say G is not a primal number, and this makes a different machine in turn that cannot be demonstrated. The problem is saying there is a G that is not a primal number. Why? Because if you codify this new machine in terms of the primal numbers, then it means it shouldn't exist. Because if this new machine is not a primal number, then you cannot implement it. So it's like saying in this, maybe it's easy if you think saying here, I am not demonstrable, or this assertion cannot be demonstrated. And you cannot say if it's true or not true. Why? Because you are thinking in terms of building a machine to prove this particular assertion. And if the assertion says there is no number that corresponds to me, is something like that. I am an assertion and I'm saying I have no primal number associated to me.
But we cannot like build this machine. We cannot do it physically.
You cannot because
we just can't. It's
no, because if you build it, you see the problem. This is why you cannot build it.
If it's not a primal number, we cannot build it.
You can say it is, but you cannot say it is not. And this is why. If you have an assertion that says, I am, there is no primal number assigned to me. I'm the assertion. Okay, it's easier to explain in terms of me. I am an assertion, and I say, there is no primal number associated with me. Yes?
That's false.
It's false, then it means there is, it means the contrary. Then it means there is a primal number associated with me. If there is a primal number associated with me, then there is a machine that can prove this. And if I say that, then I won't be able to prove this because I would need to build a machine that contradicts itself. The problem
don't get it.
or maybe the problem is that you need to codify yourself. When you codify yourself, then you feed with your code. And if you say, no, I cannot, I'm sure there is no code for explaining me or for demonstrating me. The problem is that you, in order to do that, you had to make your code. Then it is not true. If you say, as it says here, there is no primal number corresponding to this assertion, then in order to prove this, you need to build a machine that has a primal number. And the fact of building this machine contradicts this because it says there is no number associated to this.
We just fit this, the number corresponding to this assertion that we have, like literally what it says. We write it in the terms of logic blocks, make a number from it, feed it to machine G. It tests if this is a primal number or not.
Yes,
and we get the answer.
In trying to demonstrate it, you contradict yourself because you are trying to demonstrate that there is no such machine. It's something like, in order to demonstrate this, then you build a machine, and when you build a machine, then you contradict that there is not such number. Because the machine should say when it is not.
We can either build a machine or cannot build a machine. If it's a prime number, we can build this machine. If that's not a prime number, we cannot build the machine.
You cannot find the number G for which this is true. Because you are asking, what is the number that corresponds to a machine that does not exist? Put it in different words. This is the central question. What is the number G that corresponds to this machine that it says that it cannot be built? It has no answer. This is the main problem, that you are asking for something that has no answer because you are asking for something undefined. Tell me what is the undefined. I cannot tell you because it's undefined. So the problem as before is that we are asking for something that has no answer in terms of the power of the same system. And despite the intention of Russell to avoid all these kind of things, what Gödel did was to include this number to declare this number or this assertion within the principles of mathematics. When he did this, then the problem was that the number G, and this number G corresponds to this assertion, is not demonstrable, cannot be demonstrated by rules of Principia Mathematica. So the problem is not doing or not this machine, as Dima correctly says. Yes, you can do a machine that says yes or not. The problem is when you feed the code for the same machine in order to say something about itself. It's when I say, I am not demonstrable, then how can I prove that I am not demonstrable? If I prove that I am not demonstrable, then I am demonstrable. And if I prove the contrary, then it's true that I'm not demonstrable, but I have just demonstrated myself. This is the problem with the self-reference and the negation. Here lies the problem. Then this broke in certain way these rules of Principia Mathematica, because it's like saying, as I'm saying here, the present formula is not demonstrable by the rules of Principia Mathematica. I am not a theorem. I'm undemonstrable. And how did Gödel manage to put this number within itself? He used something called the elephant within the how do you call these things you used to smoke? Like Cinderella. What Cinderella sell? Matches. Thank you. You send me the answer telepathically. So it's like the elephant in the matchbox. Gödel, when he was young in 1931, had discovered suddenly a big ocean of twisted formula that was hidden in the protected world by a theory of types and supposedly free of paradox that Russell and Whitehead had created in their great work, the Principia Mathematica. This and many of the counterintuitive properties of the original formula of Gödel and their innumerable colleagues have keep busy since then a lot of mathematic people, logic, and philosophers. And so in order to finish, just 5 more minutes, how did Gödel put the G number into the formula? And this is where the thing we saw previously, that when we were playing to the very number, is that enormous numbers have descriptions that are very short. Like this, that looks very awful, is just 9 to the power of 9. Or, and he was using the elephant in the matchbox analogy. This is quine, and this is the elephant in the matchbox, so that you can see it exists. So it means like putting something very big into something very small, like compressing it. That was how Gödel used the way of coding of the Principia Mathematica in order to put something that was not able to be demonstrated within this system. So perhaps you are still with doubts on this system. Don't worry, because the Principia Mathematica is complex, but we will see the same using Turing machines. That is why we are looking this. We will find a language that can be defined using a Turing machine that cannot be that can be defined for trying to build a Turing machine, and then we will see that we cannot build this Turing machine because being able to build it makes us fall into contradiction. And it's very similar. So I think it will be clearer when we try to formalize it, because this talk is very informal. So we don't go very deep into particular ways on coding it. But this is what Gödel did. And then this can be done as well by Turing, by using Turing machines. And this is what defines what is computable and what is not computable. This is why it is very important. So the title of this course is Theory of Computation. The final question, the ultimate question is then what is computable and what is not, and how can we define it? This is why this is a very important question, and this is why we have spent the last 2 hours and a little bit more dealing with these kind of questions, because this is what directs our main question in this course. Okay, so thank you for being here for a while, and sorry for taking your time. And I hope you enjoyed the talk, which was maybe a bit weird, but I hope you enjoyed, and we will keep coming again and again until this contradiction thing gets understood. So don't worry. Until now, if you go to it, please eat nicely. If you have more classes, well, I hope they are not heavy. Thank you very much, and see you next Thursday. There is no homework for today, so okay. There's a prize for you. Take care a lot and see you.
Thank you, bye.
I have a headache.
Bye-bye.
Sorry for that. Yeah, that's a consequence of this class, but it's not. It's a consequence, but it was not intended.
I'll see you.
Thank you, Doctor. It was a good class. Many doubts, but a lot of interest.
Yeah, I hope in next classes we try to, how to say, desmenuzar, to go deeper into such details.
Yeah, thanks. See you.
See you.
Thank you. Thank you. See you.